I've said many times before that f2 is all you need. Well, now this rather special little lens from 7 Artisans really makes that clear. Hello everybody, and thanks for checking in once again. And today we're going to take a look at this rather special lens from 7 Artisans. This is the 35mm f2 lens, and this is made for your Leica M rangefinder camera. And I'll take it off my camera here and I'll show you exactly why that is. That's because it has built into it a rangefinder cam. You can see it there moving in and out, so that will move the rangefinder mechanism on your Leica camera. So this really is a very good low-cost solution for Leica rangefinders. But of course you don't have to shoot it on a Leica rangefinder. I've been shooting it on my Sony A7 here. I've been adapting it to the camera with this 7 Artisan adapter here. This is a very good adapter. It's nothing different over and above really any other adapter, except that it's very nicely made and it's grey, so it gives your camera a little bit of colour, which I think is pretty cool. Pop it back on the camera there, and yeah, so you can see it gives your camera this little flash of sort of gunmetal grey here, which makes it look pretty nice. I think the lens comes in this leather case, and it's a really nice high quality feeling case, and it's lined with a sort of a velvety material. It's padded and it's very strong on the outside, so that's really going to protect your lens nicely. So generally the feeling of quality with this lens and its packaging is very high, and it does feel like a premium product. Now, in terms of optical abilities, this lens really does stand out as one of the nicest lenses that I've used. It makes some very, very beautiful images. I've used so many of these lenses recently, or quite a few at least, of the TT Artisan, the 7 Artisan lenses, quite a lot of the Chinese made lenses, and this one really does stand head and shoulders above many of the others. It makes fantastic images. We'll look at those very shortly, and its standard of manufacturing is really high too. All of the tolerances are very, very tight and very, very nicely machined, and there's no slack or looseness or slop in any of them. The focus ring is this ring here, so it's at the towards the back on this lens, and it's focused by this little tab underneath. So the idea is that you put your finger on this tab and focus like that, and it's a very short focus throw, so you can move the whole thing, the lens, right throughout its range, just using one finger from infinity right to its closest minimum focus distance of 0.7, I think. Yeah, 0.7 meters or 70 centimeters. That's quite common in rangefinder lenses. They used to go down to 1 meter only. The more modern ones go down to 0.7 meters, and this is one such. So we've got that very short focus throw of what? That's no more than 1/3 of a turn. Yeah, that's about 1/3 of a turn, maybe just over 1/3 of a turn. The aperture ring is at the front, and it's clicked, and it's got half stops between each click, and the values run from f2 to f22, and I'm actually quite at home with that arrangement because I learned photography on the Russian lenses, which all have, or mostly have, focus ring at the back, aperture ring at the front. So that's nice and easy for me, because that's one of the old FSU rangefinder conventions. Now I believe that this is a sonar lens, that is, its lens elements, the glass elements inside it, of which there are 7, are arranged according to a certain formula, and that's the sonar formula developed by the Zeiss company in the 1930s. And looking at those images, I think that might be right. They do have a bit of a sonar feel, but I'm not absolutely definite on that, but I'm reasonably sure this is a sonar layout, or sonar formula rather, lens. All the markings are engraved on this lens. I'll show you the markings. So we've got a depth of field scale here, just in the manner of the older lenses, the vintage lenses. We've got the focus here in meters and feet, and we've got the aperture here. All those markings are engraved, so that's very nice to see. Those are never going to wear away. They're very nicely applied, and the engraving itself is very, very smooth and very high quality work. I'm not sure how many aperture blades there are in this lens. I'll just have a quick count up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, it looks like 10 blades in that aperture. So you're going to get a nicely circular, or rather nicely circular specular highlights in the background. You know, little balls in the outer focus areas from point light sources. Those should be nice and round and not jagged as you close down, so they should be pretty smooth. So this is a very, very nicely made lens with a very high quality feel and a very much premium feel, and it really is a premium product. Everything about it is nice. Not only the manufacturing, but also the image quality, and really the images are, of course, what it's all about. Perhaps because, or if this is a sonar formula lens, that might go some way to explaining why the images it makes are so very, very nice. And they do stand head and shoulders above the images from many, many other lenses. The quality of these images really was quite stunning. I wasn't expecting such really nice image quality from a lens at this price point, but I was surprised. They are absolutely fantastic. Firstly, it's a very, very sharp lens. It's sharp from wide open at f2. Everything is very, very detailed, very, very clear. There is no softness in any parts of the image, and this is a lens you really can shoot all day long wide open and really not worry about getting any softness in your image, because it's just not a soft lens. It's very, very sharp right from that f2 maximum aperture. I used it wide open for most of the time, partly because I enjoy creating a little background blur, but also partly because when a lens is this sharp wide open, you rarely need to stop down. In fact, the only times that I did stop down were when I was shooting people on the street, and there's not always time to get pin sharp focus when you're on the street. If I'm shooting people on the street, I generally don't shoot wide open, although I do occasionally, but more often than not I'll close down to f5.6 or f8, and at those aperture values, close down to those values, it's extremely sharp. It doesn't appear significantly sharper than wide open, but it makes it much easier to get that critical focus if you're on the street. You know, you can't always be focusing. There's not always time to get your critical focus on the street, so stop down to 5.6 or f8 like I did, and you'll have a much greater depth of field, so that images you shoot are likely to be in focus, and that really cool street portrait that you've seen will most likely be in focus rather than out. But that's really the only time I closed down this lens, I stopped down this lens, is when shooting on the street, to make it easier to get that critical focus. I was really pleased with the colours from this lens. I wouldn't call it a warm lens, but then again, it's not a particularly cool lens. Colours seem to strike just the right balance, just a beautiful balance between warm and cold. They're very saturated, they've got loads of pop, they've got loads of body and depth and energy. Really, this little lens must have some very special coatings on it, because it does beautiful things with colour, and it'll take a mundane colour, a mundane scene, and just point up that colour enough to make it beautiful, to make it interesting, to give it some zing and some energy and some pop. Colours have loads of pop from this lens, and they seem to just leap out right from the image right at you, and that's really nice to see. There's lots of vibrance, there's lots of energy, there's lots going on, and these are very solid colours as well. There's no, does it make sense if I say there's no hesitation about them? They're very bold, they're very much there, they're not sort of delicate, they're very solid, clear, definite, present colours, and the balance is just very nice. A lot of lenses I've tested have a very clear lean towards the cool or towards the warm. This just seems to strike the right note, and I didn't have any complaints at all about the colours from the lens. In fact, I think it makes beautiful colours. Right, let's talk about blur. Well now, the blur from this lens is very special. No word of a lie, this is some of the nicest blur I've seen from any lens. It is consistently smooth, it is consistently lovely, soft, beautiful, it's just delicious, and it's pretty much unflappable right throughout the range of camera to subject distances, subject to background distances. You can play with those distances as much as you like. You can put in the background whatever you like. This lens will not flap. It will not lose its cool. Well, almost never anyway. There was only one occasion, and I've taken hundreds of shots with this lens. There was only one occasion when I managed to unsettle it even a little bit, and that was a situation with some fairly heavy foliage around about 8 to 10 feet away, and at this particular distance and this particular type of foliage, it just began to get unsettled a little bit and just began excuse me, just began to show a little bit of nervousness in its background blur. But that was one occasion out of hundreds. It's almost always smooth, it's almost always soft, and this smoothness and softness has a very special pleasing quality. It's delicious, it's delightful, you could fall into it. It massages and caresses the shot. It provides a perfect counterpoint to the sharpness of the lens, the uniform softness of the background, time after time after time. And that sharpness and that very beautiful blur, that happens again and again. That gives this lens some real 3D pop. You can really make things stand out with this lens and emphasize things with this lens in a way that you can't do with many others. So those three things working together, sharpness, color and blur, just come together to produce the loveliest shots you could imagine. They're smooth, they're sharply focused, they're solid, they have very beautiful blur on almost every shot. It's a holy trinity of photographic elements that really comes together to make this a very, very successful lens indeed. There is a bit of chromatic aberration. You know, if you're shooting, say, in against some trees, for example, with bare branches in the winter against the sky, and very often those branches will show just little colour fringes, so you'll get maybe a little fringe of purple to one side, a little fringe of green to the other side, and you don't see it unless you really look for it, unless you zoom in and pixel peep, but it is there on this lens. It does have some chromatic aberration, and it has it right across the visual field. It's not just in the corners, it does show that across the visual field. So I guess that's the thing that many lenses do exhibit. I have to be honest though, I've got to say I think this one exhibits it more than most. I think this one has a little more chromatic aberration than many lenses you will see. It's not wild chromatic aberration, the divergence is not great, there's just a tiny little shadow of the purpley stuff, and it only shows on those very specific circumstances when you're shooting, for example, tree branches in winter against the sky, and then you will see it. It doesn't appear, it's not a common phenomenon, you're not going to see it very much, but if you're shooting in those conditions, you will see a little bit of chromatic aberration, or CA. That's what the cool kids call it. There's a little bit of vignetting with this lens, wide open at f2, but it is only a little bit because it's not as fast a lens as a 1.4 or a 1.2, so there isn't so much. There's a tiny little bit. What there is very well controlled. It doesn't show up a great deal in your shots because there isn't a great deal of it, but it is gone by f5.6, and the visual field is completely without any vignetting by that aperture setting. So there we are. I think this is a really, really beautiful little lens, and I'm very, very impressed with what it can do. It's a great budget solution for your Leica rangefinder camera, and it's also a fantastic lens to use on any other mirrorless camera that you happen to have. It has very beautiful colour, strikingly beautiful colour. It's very, very sharp from wide open, and it has that beautiful blur, that almost unparalleled blur. That's some of the nicest blur I've seen from any lens I've shot, and some of the most consistent blur I've seen from any lens I've shot. Most consistently nice, that is. So all in all, this is a very, very fine little lens indeed. It does have a bit of chromatic aberration, and it does have a little bit of vignetting, but then nothing in this universe is perfect, and I think on balance this is a very beautiful little lens and a great addition to any photographer's kit. So I guess that about I guess that about wraps it up from me for today. So please, before you go, don't forget to do all those YouTubey things like liking, subscribing and ringing of bells, please. Thank you very, very much to all of our subscribers. Many thanks to all of you for all your support, and many thanks of course go to patrons, without whom this channel couldn't do what it does. So many thanks to all of you. And if you like the content on this channel, you might consider becoming a patron yourself. You can do it at www.patreon.com/Zenography, and you can do it for only one, or from, I should say, only one of your Earth dollars per month. So many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the show. And if you're not too busy, please do tune in next time and join me for a spot more Zenography. Cheerio all.